Rachel Reeves wouldn't really understand a farming job. She doesn't even understand the job she's done. Not really sure where she worked, what job she did, how long she did it, or even whether she actually won a chess championship. So much so that she actually apparently edited her own LinkedIn profile. That's that awful businessy website. I went on it once and I've just never gone on it again last week to remove her previous claim that she worked as an economist at the Bank of Scotland between 2006 and 2009. The site was updated to state her role was in retail banking at Halifax. Some question marks also about how long she spent working at the Bank of England as well. Well, let's talk about this with Henry Hill. He's deputy editor of Conservative Home. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, some of us might think that, you know, whether it was, I don't know, someone working on the tills in a burger takeaway or someone, I don't know, actually controlling the purse strings of the nation, that that their honesty should not be in question when they tell you things, that they're telling you the truth. But there are some big question marks now being raised about Rachel Reeves' CV, and Number 10 has refused to say whether she broke the ministerial code or not. Tell us exactly. I mean, there are a whole number of different things that have been claimed along the lines, whether it's in documents to, given to constituents when she was running as an MP, or put out in speeches and documents by the Labour Party, and obviously her LinkedIn page as well. Tell us what the queries are and what are the question marks.
So there's sort of two at the opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of seriousness, and as you say, there's a laundry list in the middle. And I confess that unless I was here reading about to you from a scroll, I couldn't give you them all. The first one, which you alluded to, was the champion chess one, right? Where she was saying, "Oh yeah, I'm a champion chess player." Actually, what that meant was she was in a championship tournament. And then at the other end,
she came 29th. Everyone thought she'd won. She was a chess prodigy. She'd won the championship. She actually came 29th, I think.
Well, it's really good to know that my school sports days were actually glorious triumphs. So I think I managed to come 29th, and there weren't even that many races. But the big one, as you say, is there was the idea that she worked as an economist at the Bank of Scotland. Obviously, that was HBOS at the time, and then it emerged. Actually, maybe she wasn't. Maybe she was working in retail banking, and then it emerged that actually what she was in, I think she was in a kind of administration and complaints department within Halifax, which is a perfectly fine work, of course, but that's not being an economist at the Bank of Scotland. And you've presumably read CVs from people sometimes when they take a 6-month internship and they're saying that they mastered 100 competencies and all the rest of it. I'm sure at some point or other we've all done this, and then eventually you forget to update your LinkedIn because, as you say, it's a soul-crushing website. Why would you go on it? But it is a real challenge for Labour in a sense, because what is it, a breach of the ministerial code? Probably. I mean, I think there's a slight danger there in that all kinds of things are breaches of the ministerial code. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a resigning
But the key thing here is it's not just what she did at HBOS, at Halifax Bank of Scotland, as it was then. It's also about how long she spent working at the Bank of England. Now, one of the things about your CV is very clear on, you choose CV, you have to state when you started and when you left somewhere. Your reference will state when you started, when you left somewhere. I know how long and what years I worked at various different newspapers or radio stations, because you remember things like that. I left there then, I left there. You might go, oh God, when was I promoted from that to that, and have to look that up. But the idea that that you don't remember how long you worked at the Bank of England or what your job was at the Halifax Bank of Scotland, I mean, I think that's very strange. I know exactly what all of my jobs were everywhere I worked, and I think it's very, very, very weird. Unless, it's a deliberate telling of an untruth to make her CV look better. But we've particularly also had the Prime Minister. He's been going on stage, doing an interview again and again, saying we're going to have Rachel Reeves. Apparently it's terribly exciting that she's the first woman Chancellor. I try to care about these things but fail, as does most of the country. But the crucial thing is she's an economist. She worked at the Bank of England. She knows this stuff. You can trust her with the nation's finances. But if we can't trust her because her background isn't quite what she says it is, and we can't trust her to tell the truth about her own jobs, how on earth can she be Chancellor?
I mean, the reference point is actually a really good one, because, of course, you're right. If you're applying to another job that's going to check your references, they'll be like, OK, so Rachel, she says she worked between these dates and these dates. And if your reference comes back and says, no,
she was here for a week.
Going to be interested. Right. So it suggests that presumably this was maybe a politics thing, when maybe they were being slightly less rigorous. It does raise questions for the Chancellor. And it's particularly problematic because Labour went so hard on the Ministerial Code and questions of probity when they were in opposition. Rachel Reeves, in particular, there is a clip which I'm sure your researchers can dig up of her in the House of Commons saying, you know, the Ministerial Code is one of the most fundamental things. No one would never break it, and yet here we are. What, 6 months into Labour being in office, we have the Chancellor accused of misleading people over her CV. A few weeks ago, we had David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, stood up and said in the House of Commons, I have consulted the Chagossians about the Indian Ocean deal every step of the way. And the very same day, the Chagossians came out and said he hasn't spoken to us about it.
But again, that's
right?
that used to be a resigning offence if you lied in the Commons. Right. But this is it. If Boris Johnson lied about his CV, and Boris Johnson lies, I say, 10 times before breakfast, they would be all over this. A lot of the papers would be all over this. Everyone seems to be remarkably sort of calm and sanguine about the idea that the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who lied, as Sam Armstrong's been pointing out all morning, lied repeatedly about she wouldn't put up taxes on working people, including national insurance. Paul Johnson from the Institute of Fiscal Studies is very clear. You said you weren't going to put up a national insurance rate. Well, you did. You put it up on employers, but that's still putting it up. She's lied in terms of policy, but it now appears that we are questioning her honesty in terms of her own background and her own qualifications for the job of Chancellor. I don't understand why that wouldn't be a breach of the Ministerial Code.
I mean, it almost certainly is. The problem with the Ministerial Code is it is quite vague, and it is up to the Prime Minister to decide how to enforce it. Now, she hasn't lied to the Cabinet, and that's, you know, probably proper. We don't want officials deciding who is or is not in the Cabinet. That means ultimately it goes back to Sir Keir Starmer.
Well, he's the son of a toolmaker, so I mean, he would never, ever, you know, gloss over things in his background.
The toolmaker owned the factory, but I think the interesting thing is his spokesperson has really been evasive on this. But people have been asking, has Rachel Reeves lied about her CV? And the Prime Minister's response, the spokesman's response has been, well, the Prime Minister is clear that she has stabilised the economy. And it was like, well, that wasn't what we asked you. So he's not going. He clearly doesn't feel able to go out and man the trenches for Rachel Reeves, which is a really bad sign.
Very, very telling. Well, we'll keep posted on this one. Henry Hill, Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, thank you so much for joining us.